Hi, everybody. Welcome to From the Heart. I'm Liz Walker. Family caregiving seems like a pretty simple and straightforward role, but in these rapidly changing times, it can mean far more complicated and involved responsibilities. Our guest on From the Heart today has experienced the changing dynamics of families, and she's still working with them. So we welcome the pastor of Sarasota Bethel CME Church, Reverend Anita Williams. Thanks for joining us.
Hi there, Reverend Liz. Thanks for
Good to
having me
see
today.
you. Good to see you. Your background is in marriage and family therapy, and you are currently pursuing a life coaching certificate course. Now, that's in addition to being the pastor of a very involved community church, because I go to your church and I know how much you do in the community of Sarasota. So, you've always worked with families as a pastor, as a counselor. How do you define family?
Ooh, that is a good question because it seems like family dynamics have changed. So I define family as parent, child, children. I define family as a unit, and that unit looks different in this day and time than it did when I was being raised as a kid.
It
But family, nevertheless.
certainly does look different because, we used to think when I was a kid, which was a lot longer back than when you were a kid, but we used to think of family as Leave It to Beaver or Father Knows Best or I Love Lucy, the shows we saw on TV. And there was a mother and a father, and there were two or three children, and that was the family unit. But now you've got single parents, you've got uh, intergenerational families, you've got grandma, mom, everybody in there. So, how do these changes affect your ministry, or do they?
It affects it in the way that I have to be conscious and aware of the family changing dynamic, which impacts how I minister to families. Um, as you say, it used to be a mom and a dad and children or a child. And now it's single parents and it's grandparents. And every generation brings different thoughts, different values. So it's a little challenging, but it's the family nevertheless. So I'm still able to provide pastoral care to the family, no matter what that family looks like. And I really try to be aware of the generational gap. Grandparents, child in this day and age is not like my grandparent was when I was a little kid. When I was a little kid, there was absolutely no talking back. You didn't even think about it. And
Mm-hmm.
if you wanted to say something that would show that you were not pleased with what the parent or grandparent was saying, you would make sure that you were out of the room so far that they couldn't even hear you thinking. In this day and time, children are talking back, and it's not just the parents and grandparents, foster parents, it's the teachers and authorities on different levels. So family nevertheless, but there are some differences.
There are some big
Yeah.
differences. Now, what
Mhm.
about the situation that you have a lot of younger people having babies? In our church, there are just, well, first of all, there are huge numbers of little children that belong to our church. And
Mhm.
many of them are escorted in by very young parents. It could be a two parents that do that, but very, very young. Does that change your way of counseling and working with parents or not?
No,
Or
not
working with family?
necessarily. Not
Yeah.
necessarily. It might change the tools that I may use or how I may use those tools. I mean, say for instance, if I was helping the family with communication, how to communicate in a positive way would be a little different with a child than it would be with a parent or a grandparent. But
Hmm.
it's still teaching communication
Hmm.
nevertheless.
Hmm.
It's just different dynamics. Kids are different. They're more outspoken. They ask more questions. and so it's just different. It cannot be, it's no longer um, do as you're told. It's no longer do as I say and not as I do kind of thing. That we can't, in my opinion, we can't parent that way, and neither can I pastor that way, because I have kids in the church that are very outspoken. They have questions, and for me, a question, there should be an answer, and it requires patience to do that. So it's just different. The tools, the way I use the tools, but yet the tools are the same.
Well, let me ask you this, because you just brought up a good point. It's no longer do as I say. So what is it? How
Yes,
do you talk
it's
to
not
young
do as
people?
I do. Do as I say and not as I do.
Okay, that's how it is now. Do as I say and not. What are we saying to young people, because they question everything?
Right. So what we say, well, when I was growing up, it was more of do as I say. No question. I give you something to do, you just do it. In my children's generation and my grandchildren's generation, especially the grandchildren now, they are taught to ask questions and they wait for answers. So when I have a child in church that asks me a question and I answer that question, and then they ask me another one by saying, why, then I take time to try to shape the why
Mm-hmm.
so that they walk away with the understanding that you have received the answer, because they're learning how to communicate. They always want to know why. So I try to shape the why. I try to shape the answer so that they walk away feeling and knowing that they've received an answer. So I try to quiet the why, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. It
But
does.
not just, telling them, go away, stop asking questions. That's a no-no.
Keep them engaged as much as you can.
Absolutely.
So we're both church ladies. We grew up in the church. I think you grew up in the church just
I
like I
did.
did. How has the church? Let's talk about your denomination. I'm Presbyterian, but I'm under watch care with your church, which is Christian Methodist Episcopal. How has the CME church changed in responding to the needs of changing families? Do we have literature? Do we have biblical studies that work on the changing family or not?
To a degree. I say to a degree because and I imagine this is, across the faith, I would hope, teaching is a priority. We have in our church what's called the Board of Christian Education. And that particular ministry is all about providing education to a family or a child that family or child needs,
Mhm.
right? So we're always in teaching mode. But it's not always easy because, and I hope I'm answering the question, there's so many different types of teaching that's going on
Right.
in the church, outside the church. But we need to teach the children, the families, about what we believe and how that helps to shape their lives. I hope I'm answering the question.
You are, but
Yeah.
it's a tough question, because
Yeah.
it's going to lead. You know where I'm going with this. It's going to lead to there's so many issues today that we didn't have as children, but the LBGTQ plus community. How does the CME Church stand in, first of all, in just welcoming everybody into the church? And second, what are the kind of limitations? And I'm sure there are, because in most Black churches there are. What are the limitations, if any, for these
Yeah.
people to come in as a family?
Yes, there are limitations according to the denomination in terms of the denomination's stance on LGBTQ. So in our book of discipline, we have what's called social creed, general rules, and the social creed teaches us that our belief is in marriage of a man and a woman. So right there sets the standard of what family looks like from our book of discipline,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I understand that, but Reverend Liz, and I'll tell you what's happening with me, if I can just be frank, as I've heard my mama say. I understand our denomination stance, but I also can see the changes in our community, the changes in the world in terms of families and relationships, right? And whether we like it or not, they are in the church. And so I pastor according to my love for God and how I think God would have me to pastor people,
Mm-hmm.
um, in whatever way they come. Now, that can be confrontational for a lot of people. But for me, at the end of the day, we are talking about. I am focused on providing pastoral care to anyone who walked through the doors of Bethel Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. Now, there are limits. I get it, and I don't know how all denominational entities deal with those their limits. But for me, it's the human being first.
Mm-hmm.
It's the human being first, and that's how I navigate my belief, my faith, and with what our denomination, you know, teaches us, what the denomination stance is on that.
You and I have
Yeah.
talked about this. Yeah, that makes sense to me. You and I have talked about this when I was pastoring a church. There was two or three times that there was confrontation over this issue, and I had to be true to who
Hmm.
I am and who God is and what God says to me. And sometimes that does kind of run head against what the dogma or doctrine of a church might be. So you try to thread the needle because I respect the church. I am, I'm not one of those trying to shut down or change or all of that, but I have to be true
Yeah.
to God in me. And I think that's what you're saying. You're probably saying a lot more diplomatically, but I think that's what you're saying. And I think that's what a lot of preachers have to do. But I honestly believe this is a real deal issue. Whether we talk about it formally or not, it's an issue we have to face as pastors, don't you?
Yes, and I agree with you. Even within my own heart and belief, I've experienced, challenges within myself, knowing what the denomination's stance is, knowing what I believed earlier on in my ministry, and knowing where I am right now in my spiritual growth. And so I've had my own inward challenges, and I've had to put my own faith, you know, on the witness stand, if you will, to say, what is it that you believe?
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
know what the denomination says. I know what, history says. I know conversations with my friends from now and back in the day. But the thing that helps me, Reverend Liz, is I want to make sure that I am doing what I have been called to do, according to the one who has called me to do it.
I hear
And
you.
that's in whom I believe, my God, Jesus. And like we talked about before, what would Jesus do? How would Jesus respond?
Right.
And I want to believe that Jesus would respond to LGBTQ plus the way he responded to the adulterer, the murderer, you know, the liar, according to his love and care for
Right.
people. And I know that's different for a lot of people.
Well, I'll take it a step further. I think he'd respond to that community like he responds to me because we're all wounded, we're all broken, we're all sinners, and so I don't believe. Now you can tell me I don't believe Jesus privileges sins. I just don't
Mm,
see this. that you have a hierarchy of sins, you know? It is what it is. We're all broken trying to get healed is how I look at it. But
I
anyway.
I agree. We're all broken trying to get healed. And the sad part about it, and this is my opinion, is when how do I say this? When we determine how broken a person is and we determine what they need to heal. Not only that, but how we pass judgment. And we are, oh my gosh, the sins that are evident, and this might be getting off a bit, but the sins that are evident, we can so quickly crucify.
Don't we? Don't
Yeah.
preach, girl, preach. You're talking the truth.
But what about those ones that are not so easily seen?
Right.
Yeah, what about those?
Right.
So it's a tough time, I believe, for the community of faith. But I shouldn't say but, it's a tough time, and it's one that we need to, I think, approach very seriously and carefully too. Because everybody will not embrace same-sex marriages, same-sex parents, fostering or adopting, because there's history that shows that that's what we have.
Right.
Kids are being raised by same-sex parents, women, men. And so for the church, this is my soapbox, for the church to turn a blind eye to that, to act like that does not exist, we are doing a disservice when we do that. That's what I think.
Sometimes I think the church, and I'm going to say that's the big C, that's not the CME, that's not the Presbyterian, that's just kind of the prevailing attitude. We create these images of perfection. This is what it should be down here. But I don't know if God calls us to that down here. I think we're called to perfection. We're called to, to be Christ-like. But I think that's a lifelong kind of thing. So this notion of perfection, unless you are a mother and a father and 3 little children, I can't talk to you. I don't think that works. But I think a lot of people do that, more than we'd like to admit. And I think that holds people back from even knowing who Christ is. That's what I think. What do you think?
I think I think the same, because it's hard to deny, and this is from a pastor's perspective, folk who walk into your church and that they are not the traditional family. That they are not the traditional parent. And when they come to you because they have a situation, and now they openly, let you know the kind of parent that they are. It's still a person who's sitting in front of me who needs pastoral care. That's my call. That's what I'm chosen to do.
Amen.
I could not say, oh no, I'm not able to provide care for you because you're in a same-sex relationship. That's not my call, Reverend Liz.
I hear you.
But we cannot deny it. It's in the church. And when persons come to the altar for prayer, how do we turn them away?
Exactly. How do we turn anybody away?
How do we turn anybody away? Absolutely. So the church has to take a deeper look at itself. Who are we and what are we doing? And we have to come to terms with the truth. Am I doing this the way Jesus would do it? How would I want Jesus to respond to me if it were me? Because I have some other stuff that I'm dealing with, and I want Jesus to fix that for me.
Right.
So should I not want everybody to be healed from their brokenness, whatever that is?
Absolutely. You and I. Do you find any pushback from your fellow ministers anywhere, or do you think that more and more ministers are pastors are kind of trying to deal with this, struggle with this?
Both. I have some in the circle that's an automatic. That's an automatic no.
Mm-hmm.
I have others in the circle that I tend to talk to more because they too are with the reality. This is the world we live in now. And how do we continue to be whom we have been chosen to be in this world in which we live today?
Right, right,
We're still called to pastor.
right.
And when I received the call, it wasn't calling me to only pastor this group of people,
Mm-hmm.
these kinds of people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's not the call. As a matter of fact, the calling that I received from God is without limits. There are no borders, and there's no color. There's no particular physical physique.
Right,
It's none of that.
right,
And,
right.
and Liz, if I could say this now, before I'm facing all I'm facing now, that was good. But now there's something more, and I'm saying, oh well, wait a minute. I didn't see this coming, but here it is, and it's a part of it. And we are still called to, meet those needs too. So I'm up for it.
So many things are changing around us, and I always wonder if this is not God calling us to a growth. That it's not just about what's obstacles and what are our challenges, but it's about how we grow in our faith and how we grow in our hearts with this. There's so many families all over the country suffering in this particular moment with the deportation crisis. Now, I haven't seen that so much in our neighborhood here in Sarasota, in the Newtown area. But is that something that is affecting and is being the church has to confront in this part of the world? I know it's happening. We all know it's happening in Minneapolis. We know it's happening all over the country.
Absolutely.
Is it happening here?
I would say so. Maybe not like it is in Minneapolis, but I think it's probably happening everywhere we have our Black and brown people. There's an organization right here in Sarasota that they lead or organize prayer visuals every Sunday on behalf of the immigration community because of what's happening with them. And so they arrange a prayer visual every Sunday, and they reach out to certain pastors, any pastor who would say yes to lead the visual that Sunday. They are scheduled to do so. And when I go to those visuals, there are people from the community who are well aware of what's going on, but there are also people who are attending that have close relationships to family members who have been impacted by the whole deportation situation. So I would say, yes, it's happening right here. We may not see it on a bigger scale like we see in other places, but it's probably just a matter of time, in my humble opinion. I still hear stories. I hear stories of right here in Sarasota, families not going out to, the kids aren't going out to school as much.
Yeah.
They're not engaged in extracurricular activity as much. Right here in Sarasota.
Right, right. When I tell my friends in Boston that I'm in Sarasota, well, they go, why would you go to Florida? And I always want them to know that there are people on the front line who are resisting the status quo in this country right here in Florida. And you are one of those people because you always go to that prayer vigil. And that is one way to resist, that to pray for people who are being persecuted. That's what Jesus said, right? He said,
absolutely.
Pray for because Jesus was pretty much, he was political. People don't want to talk about that, but he was always saying, pray for those who are the least, the lost, the last. And these are the people. Do you find it takes courage to do that, I think, though, Pastor Anita, on any level. Do you find yourself kind of shaky with that just because of where we are in Florida, or you just go for it?
No, I don't just go for it. Well, let me back up. When I was first asked, I said, "Oh yeah, great idea. I'm there." But once my feet hit the ground where the actual vigil takes place, I started to feel a little anxiety because I thought, here we are in an open setting at the time of this high of immigrants deportation, and where it's located, um, it's at a park.
Right.
It's at a park, and it's across the street from the police department.
Yeah.
So once I hit the ground, then I realized the importance and the my anxiety, saying, am I safe out here?
Yeah.
Am I safe out here? Because we're no longer inside the church talking about this. We're outside in the community where people can walk up or at any time because it's public.
Right.
And not only that, it causes one to really affirm who they are and what they believe.
Absolutely.
So that's what I experienced in doing that.
But I'm here as your witness. You're out there. And we are called to do so many. I preach a sermon is, is where you have to plant hope where you stand.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody may not go to Minneapolis. Everybody might not take up a protest sign, but
Mm-hmm.
everybody can do something
Mm-hmm.
in helping God build God's kingdom. And I think that's what you're doing. And sometimes kingdom work goes up against earthly work. And that's what,
Woo.
We're talking right now. No, it's true. So I want to join you the next time you get out there, because I know you're doing the right thing. And
Wonderful.
But
I'd love to take you.
I will definitely go with you. I commend you for your courageous
Thank
stand.
you.
And so many churches are taking these courageous stands in this moment, and it all counts. I think we
Mm-hmm.
also are realizing that churches, not yours, because I see your church growing, our church here
Mm-hmm.
in Sarasota, but mainline Protestant religion, Baptist, Methodist, Congregationalist, Episcopal, it's
Mm-hmm.
not as strong as it once was. So my question is, how do we get people back into the church? Now, I got my own theory about that. What's your theory?
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. That is a good question. I think we have to consider, when we say get people back in the church, what are we bringing them back to?
Mm.
We want people to come back to church. Why? Because we want to fill the pews. We want to feel, gratitude within ourselves that we did it. I think we have to really consider, what does the church look like, not only for those who are inside the church sitting on the pews, but what does the church look like to the younger generation? There's so many different mediums where people can have church, and they got the bang, they got the boom, they got the lights, all of that. So when we look at church, I think we have to have a conversation with the group that's missing. Mm-hmm. To find out what is it that you need from church. And we know that, and we are taught that the church is, in our heart. That's good, well and fine, but we have some brick and mortar. And yes, we want people to come to the church, but what will they find when they get there? Mm-hmm. What do they find? Because many young people that I've talked to, Reverend Liz, they are not in church because of what goes on in church. Mm-hmm. That's not, on the same line with what we teach.
Right.
And so I think we have to really, because this is happening everywhere.
Absolutely.
Everywhere. There's a falling away of church, and there's a falling away of younger people. Where are the younger people? Right. And I think we have to really consider, what is church to those people? What does church look like for them? Intergenerational. is it something happening in the church that's stopping them from coming?
Mm-hmm.
Are we not
Mm-hmm.
receptive? Are we not willing to maybe learn things from the younger people? Because we can learn a lot from them. That's good. Are we willing to do that? Or do we just want them to come back and, you know, we're in charge, you just come and you just do like we say? That day is long gone.
Gone. That's been gone. Been gone. That's like back when I was a little kid. Just sit there and be quiet and I'll tell you everything.
That does not work.
Dealing with young people. Well, I just want to add one thing, and this has been such a great conversation. First of all, I think, and this is my little 2 cents, the church, big C, all churches need to have conversations like this.
I agree.
Just to see where we are.
I agree.
Not because, we're going to win or, but the other thing is that the church has to, God said, who will go? Who I'm calling, who will go? And, I will, God, call on me. We got to step out of our comfort zones to meet people where they are. Now, that's the Jesus things to me, it's so, and that's what you do when you go and do those prayer vigils. You meet people where they are. That's what we're trying to do with the Can We Talk program. And I don't know if I introduced you by saying you're a member of our network. I'm so blessed to have you. But I thank you so much because families still need us just like they needed us 100 years ago.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And whatever way we can to meet them where we are, love changes them. So we know God will step in and change. I don't want to start preaching, girl.
Yeah. Go ahead, preach.
No, but thank you. So any parting words about loving families and supporting families as you continue your ministry? Any thoughts about how you're going to do that? Or
yes, the Bible, we have favorite scriptures, whether that's good or bad or indifferent, I don't know. But there are several that really help to shape who I am. Treating people the way you want to be treated is that's like stellar for me, because that's true. And so if I want to be listened to, I need to be open to listening to others. And when we say, where are the young people, even with the kids at church right now at Bethel, if I ask them about an idea, right, and they take time to tell me, I try to take something from their idea and put that in action so that they will know that not only did Pastor hear me, but she did it. She did it. That's important, because if we just do a lot of talking and nothing comes from it, then people can walk away feeling unheard. And that's not what we want. So I think that if we just, in all of our conversations, if we just find something to use and use it. We ask young people, why are you here? Why are you not at church? What can we do? Well, are we really wanting to know what we can do? Because then when they offer it, what do? We're going to have to take something. And then lastly, I think when we say we need to meet people where they are, I don't know if we fully understand what that means. Because what if that person don't know exactly where he or she is? They're this way today, that way tomorrow. So how do we embrace that? So Jesus did it, yes. And we can do it too, because Jesus did. And I think that's what we really need to work at doing, meeting people where they are and not trying to meet them according to where we think they should be.
Amen.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'll see you at church Sunday, okay?
I'll be looking for you. Thank you for this. This was wonderful.
Thank you. It's a great conversation, Pastor Anita. And thank you all for joining us on this edition of From the Heart. We'll see you next week.
Bye.